What if the woman Prince Harry gave up everything for was secretly sleeping with the man he trusted like a father? Tonight, shocking revelations erupt from behind the gilded gates of Montecito as Prince Harry allegedly uncovers a secret affair between Meghan Markle and his adoptive father figure, David Foster. But it doesn't stop at betrayal. The real twist is a $150 million power move that could leave Harry emotionally shattered and financially ruined. Was it all part of a cold, calculated plan? We've pieced together the whispers, the digital trails, and the private breakdown no one was supposed to see. Stay with us. This is the scandal the palace never wanted exposed. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What if the fairy tale we were all sold turned out to be the most calculated con the British monarchy has ever endured? What if behind the polished smiles, designer gowns, and charitable speeches, a betrayal of royal proportions was unfolding, quietly, deliberately, and heartbreakingly close to home? The British public once celebrated Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as the modern face of the monarchy, a union of tradition and progress, royalty and Hollywood. But now, that illusion appears to be cracking at the seams. In a stunning and deeply personal twist, whispers have emerged from inside the palace walls, whispering of a betrayal so raw, so intimate, it threatens to destroy the very foundation of Prince Harry's new world. The woman he defied the world for, the woman he left the royal family for, Meghan Markle, is now accused of sleeping with David Foster, the man Prince Harry saw as a surrogate father, a protector, and a confidant after his emotional split from Buckingham Palace. And if that weren't devastating enough, sources allege it was all part of a manipulative plot to access and control over $150 million in royal and trust funds tied to Prince Harry's name. This isn't tabloid gossip. This is a story whispered in the halls of Montecito, hinted at in the cryptic social media moves, buried in carefully phrased legal documents, and slowly pieced together by those paying attention. Behind every calculated glance, every PR photo op, and every cryptic omission in interviews lies a deeper truth that Prince Harry may have been unwilling to see until now. At the center of it all stands David Foster, the Grammy-winning producer whose sudden closeness to Harry post-Megxit raised eyebrows from royal insiders, but was largely dismissed as mentorship. After all, Foster had the experience, the Hollywood savvy, and the celebrity polish to help the ex-royal navigate the treacherous waters of American fame. But what happens when the mentor begins to blur the lines between professional support and personal boundaries? What happens when the emotional refuge Prince Harry found in David Foster's household turns into a web of deceit? In this special investigation, we'll go deeper than the headlines. We'll pull back the curtain on Meghan's alleged long-game strategy, dissect her motivations and connections, and explore how Harry's trust may have been weaponized against him. Was this a woman in love, or a woman with a plan? Was this the tragic tale of a broken marriage, or the final act of a well-scripted heist of power, influence, and wealth? You will hear chilling quotes from insiders, a timeline of suspicious events, and testimonies that challenge everything we thought we knew about the Sussexes' new life in California. Why was David Foster given such intimate access to their lives? Why did Meghan remain so close to Foster even as her own relationship with Harry became strained? Why did Harry begin withdrawing from social appearances, and what role did a sudden, dramatic confrontation in a private Beverly Hills suite play in exposing the truth? It is a truth that, if fully unraveled, will not only shatter what's left of Harry and Meghan's carefully curated public image but could potentially bring legal ramifications, family excommunication, and financial devastation. The implications are enormous. This isn't just a story about infidelity. It's a story about emotional grooming, betrayal by those closest to you, and the brutal price of trusting the wrong people. Let's go back to the beginning. When Prince Harry met Meghan Markle in 2016, the spark was immediate. At least, that's how the story has always been told. A blind date turned into a whirlwind romance, one that brought hope to a monarchy desperate for a new kind of relevance. Meghan was beautiful, American, biracial, outspoken, everything the royal institution had never embraced before. Harry, forever haunted by the death of his mother and the ruthless British press, seemed smitten by her strength and poise. Together, they were supposed to be unstoppable. But there was another narrative unfolding underneath, one that only a few close observers dared to acknowledge. As the relationship matured and the wedding approached, cracks began to form. Staff reports from Kensington Palace hinted at Meghan's controlling behavior and emotional volatility. Family tensions, particularly between Meghan and Kate Middleton, escalated. Behind closed doors, Harry began severing ties with longtime friends, distancing himself from royal duties and adopting a siege mentality, one encouraged by Meghan and her inner circle. Among the voices supporting this transition was David Foster. In 2019, following the Sussex's bombshell interview with Oprah and their decision to step away from royal duties, it was Foster who emerged as a key player in Harry's post-palace life. He helped secure housing for the couple when they first moved to Canada. He offered Harry access to his network of celebrities, producers, and philanthropists. Meghan and David's wife, Catherine McPhee, were reportedly close during this period. On the surface, it seemed like a natural Hollywood alliance. But soon, things took a strange turn. Sources began noting how often Meghan was seen at Foster's mansion without Harry. Business meetings, dinner parties, charity galas, Foster and Meghan were always present, often photographed side by side. Meanwhile, Harry's presence at public events diminished. Rumors swirled about tension in the marriage, whispered reports of arguments and estrangement. And then came the tipping point, a private confrontation at an upscale LA hotel, after Harry allegedly received photographic evidence suggesting a betrayal had taken place. The details of what happened in that suite are murky, but insiders claim it involved a screaming match, security intervention, and a devastated Prince Harry confronting Meghan with accusations that left her silent. David Foster, when reached by reporters days later, gave a no-comment statement that only intensified speculation. But why would Meghan allegedly do this? Why risk it all, her marriage, her public image, her financial future? The answer, according to some close to the situation, lies in money. Specifically, in the $150 million Harry allegedly has access to through trust funds, media deals, and royal inheritances. Meghan, they claim, felt entitled to those funds. And if Harry ever walked away, she needed leverage. This leverage may have come in the form of secrets, family secrets, medical history, personal files, and alliances with those who held emotional sway over Harry. Foster, according to one whistleblower, wasn't just a mentor. He was an emotional key to controlling Harry. And Meghan, sharp, intuitive, and always 5 steps ahead, may have known exactly how to use him. Prince Harry's reaction has been one of cautious retaliation. He hasn't spoken publicly, but his recent moves suggest a man in freefall, but also awakening. Sources say he severed ties with several mutual friends of Meghan and David, hired private investigators, and even sought spiritual counseling. One former Palisade says Harry is determined not to be the last to know ever again. So what happens now? Over the next several chapters, we will break down the timeline of events that led to this alleged betrayal, examine the relationships that built and broke this scandal, and follow the money trail that might explain what truly happened between Meghan Markle and David Foster. We'll explore legal fallout, emotional collapse, and the devastating implications for the royal brand. This isn't just a scandal. This is a story of power, betrayal, and the dangerous mix of royalty and Hollywood. Stay with us as we peel back the layers and expose the truth behind what might be the most heartbreaking chapter in Prince Harry's life. Let us now dive into the beginning of that unraveling. The royal backstory, the Foster connection, and the fragile trust that opened the door to what some are calling the ultimate betrayal. To truly understand how the betrayal unraveled, how Prince Harry could end up allegedly betrayed not just by his wife, but by a man he regarded as a second father, we have to go back. Not just to the beginning of Harry and Meghan's relationship, but to the psychological and emotional foundation that made Prince Harry vulnerable to the exact type of manipulation he may now be confronting. And right in the middle of this backstory stands David Foster, the acclaimed music producer, philanthropist, and man who, in Harry's post-royal years, became something of a surrogate patriarch. But how did this unlikely trio come together? And why did it end in whispers of deception, broken trust, and financial devastation? It begins with trauma. Prince Harry's life has always been punctuated by emotional turmoil, most notably the tragic death of his mother, Princess Diana, in 1997. He was only 12 when he walked behind her coffin, an image that haunted the world and, according to many insiders, haunted him for decades. He was thrust into the global spotlight, forced to maintain a composed front, and raised in a family where emotional expression was often buried beneath centuries of protocol and inherited duty. Unlike his elder brother Prince William, who seemed to internalize the expectations of monarchy, Harry rebelled. He carried his grief more openly, lashed out in his youth, and clung tightly to those who offered him emotional refuge. Meghan Markle entered Harry's life at a moment when he was already questioning everything. In 2016, he was a senior royal with a growing sense of disillusionment about his public role. Meghan, on the other hand, was a Los Angeles actress who had experienced her own share of personal and professional setbacks. She was independent, ambitious, articulate, and emotionally expressive, traits that, to a man like Harry, raised in an emotionally restrained institution, would have been both refreshing and intoxicating. From the beginning, their bond seemed to bypass logic and move straight into intensity. Their whirlwind romance led to a grand royal wedding in 2018, attended by celebrities, royalty, and the eyes of nearly 2 billion people around the world. But behind the scenes, it was clear that Meghan and Harry were not going to follow the traditional playbook. Frustrated by the constraints of royal life, appalled by what they saw as racially tinged attacks from the British press, and angered by internal palace politics, the couple began plotting their exit. That exit, famously dubbed Megxit, would mark the first time in modern history that a senior royal voluntarily stepped back from duty, and it would set the stage for the David Foster chapter to begin. David Foster and his wife, singer and actress Catherine McPhee, entered the Sussexes' orbit during the couple's post-royal move to North America. After spending time in Canada while deciding their next steps, Harry and Meghan reportedly leaned on the Fosters to help them settle. Foster, a veteran of the entertainment industry with deep connections in Hollywood, was instrumental in helping them find a private, secure home on Vancouver Island before they moved to Montecito, California. In an interview given shortly after this period, Foster himself remarked that he viewed his role in Harry's life as somewhat of a father figure. At the time, this seemed benign, even generous. Foster was older, experienced in the public eye, and knew the ins and outs of navigating fame, media pressure, and personal reinvention. For Harry, who had just broken with his own family and was dealing with the cold silence of Buckingham Palace, Foster represented familiarity, mentorship, and a kind of emotional support he sorely lacked. It wasn't just David, either. Catherine McPhee reportedly shared a high school connection with Meghan Markle, and while they weren't close friends growing up, their rediscovered link gave the whole relationship a warm, trustworthy sheen. The Sussexes and the Fosters began spending increasing time together, private dinners, small social gatherings, and collaborative charity ventures. Foster's home became a place of comfort for the couple, somewhere Harry felt understood without the weight of royal judgment. But slowly, that closeness began to morph into something else. Insiders say David Foster's influence over Harry became more pronounced. He wasn't just giving career advice. He was allegedly playing an integral role in helping negotiate business deals, advising on media projects, and possibly even influencing Harry's public image strategies. The fact that Meghan and David were often seen together at events, sometimes without Harry, began to raise quiet eyebrows among their wider circle. While there's no definitive proof that anything inappropriate occurred at this stage, the dynamic was shifting, and not everyone in their circle felt comfortable about it. By 2021, Harry and Meghan had signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify. Meghan launched her Archetypes podcast, and Harry released a revealing memoir titled Spare. Foster's Hollywood expertise undoubtedly helped grease the wheels on several of these ventures. But the closeness between him and Meghan, particularly when observed in unguarded moments, began to make some of their staff uneasy. A former assistant, who later resigned, anonymously claimed that there were frequent late-night meetings between Meghan and Foster, and that Harry was occasionally left out of key conversations. Whether it was professional strategy or something more personal remains a matter of speculation. Compounding this was the fact that Harry himself was becoming increasingly isolated. According to those close to him, he was growing paranoid, anxious, and uncertain about whom to trust. His relationship with his brother, Prince William, had completely deteriorated. He was estranged from his father, King Charles, and had little contact with other royal family members. In this emotional vacuum, David Foster's role became even more central, and Meghan's ability to sway both men created a powerful triangle. The question remains, did Meghan exploit this situation, knowingly or unknowingly? Was Foster aware of the full emotional vulnerability Harry was experiencing, or did he simply see himself as a helpful ally? The lines between mentor, friend, and potential rival were becoming dangerously blurred. What makes this even more complex is the subtle power imbalance at play. David Foster was already a powerful figure in his own right. A man with 16 Grammy Awards, an international reputation, and decades of experience shaping careers. Meghan, with her sharp instincts and Hollywood ambition, likely saw Foster as both a useful ally and a figure to impress. She knew the industry's rules and how to navigate powerful men. Meanwhile, Harry, never fully comfortable in the entertainment space, may have felt like a third wheel in his own marriage's public evolution. By late 2022, reports of tension between Harry and Meghan were trickling into the public domain. There were fewer joint appearances. Meghan seemed increasingly focused on her own projects, while Harry appeared disconnected, even despondent in several interviews. One source claimed Harry had begun questioning some of Meghan's financial decisions, including her hiring of new PR strategists and high-end consultants without consulting him. And then came the rumors. Quiet at first, murmured in private Hollywood circles, whispered among staffers, and hinted at by rival media outlets, until one explosive accusation changed everything. That Meghan and David Foster had crossed the line. That there had been an affair. That Harry had found evidence, photographs, messages, or perhaps an overheard conversation that confirmed his deepest fear. The man he had trusted like a father had allegedly betrayed him in the most intimate, irreversible way. This backstory is not just a build-up. It's the entire framework of the emotional, financial, and psychological disaster now facing Prince Harry. His journey from palace prince to private citizen was built on a promise of freedom, reinvention, and a life unburdened by royal duty. But in pursuing that promise, he may have walked straight into a trap laid by the very people he thought would protect him. The collapse of trust isn't just about one betrayal, it's about years of emotional groundwork, isolation from family, and the careful cultivation of new relationships that were supposed to fill that void. Meghan Markle and David Foster may have presented themselves as partners in progress. But to Prince Harry, the evidence now reportedly says something far darker, that his wife and his surrogate father may have been manipulating him all along. As we move into the next chapter, we will dive headfirst into that explosive moment, the alleged affair. We will reconstruct the timeline, the setting, and the confrontation that turned suspicion into fury. This is the point where everything changed, where heartbreak turned into revenge, and where Prince Harry began to fight back. In the world of royalty, betrayal is rarely simple. It's never just a kiss behind closed doors or a flirtation taken too far. When your life is followed by cameras, dissected by tabloids, and intertwined with politics, legacy, and vast fortunes, betrayal becomes a multi-layered weapon, a blade that cuts through trust, reputation, and identity all at once. For Prince Harry, the alleged discovery that Meghan Markle, his wife and partner in public reinvention, was intimately involved with David Foster, the man he had welcomed into his life as a father figure, wasn't just personal. It was nuclear, and it didn't unfold like a soap opera or gossip column. It detonated like a carefully timed scandal, one quietly boiling under the surface before exploding in private, behind a thick wall of security, money, and silence. To understand the gravity of the moment Prince Harry allegedly confronted Meghan Markle about her affair with David Foster, you must first grasp how tightly wound their lives had become. Meghan and David had grown extremely close. More than business partners, more than friends. Whispers of constant phone calls, one-on-one meetings, and unexplainable disappearances began circulating among staff. Some even claimed Meghan and Foster shared coded language during conversations in front of others, short phrases or looks that bypassed everyone else in the room. Despite the mounting unease, Prince Harry had reportedly tried to convince himself there was nothing to fear. The idea that Meghan would be unfaithful, let alone with someone he considered a trusted mentor, was almost too painful to contemplate. Still, suspicions began to corrode his inner world. According to one insider, the tipping point came when Harry's personal assistant uncovered a trail of encrypted messages on a shared tablet device. The contents weren't just suggestive, they were explicit. And what's worse, the conversations allegedly dated back months. Some contained references to secret meetings, travel arrangements, and even thinly veiled discussions of Harry's emotional state. This discovery shattered the fragile trust Harry had been clinging to. What followed was a series of rapidly escalating confrontations, first with his security team, then with the household staff, and finally, with Meghan herself. It culminated in a now infamous night at a luxury hotel suite in Beverly Hills, where sources say Harry had arranged to meet Meghan under the guise of discussing upcoming charity events. In reality, he had come prepared, with screenshots, call logs, and a boiling sense of betrayal he could no longer contain. The scene, as described by those who claimed to have witnessed it from afar, was intense. Security was told to clear the floor. Meghan arrived first, reportedly unaware of what awaited her. When Harry entered, he was not the charming prince the world was used to seeing. He was trembling, pale, and visibly furious. What started as a quiet exchange quickly escalated into raised voices, accusations, and eventually, a chilling silence that one source described as the sound of a man watching his life fall apart. Meghan, for her part, allegedly denied the affair at first. She insisted that her relationship with Foster was strictly professional, that they were working on undisclosed business projects and philanthropic ventures. But according to two anonymous witnesses, Harry wasn't buying it. He presented the evidence he'd gathered, laid it out one by one, and challenged Meghan to explain why her late-night rendezvous with Foster had been kept secret, why they used hotel aliases, why they communicated on a secondary device kept hidden from public staff. It's reported that Meghan tried to regain control of the narrative. She turned the conversation back on Harry, accusing him of being paranoid, of letting royal pressure cloud his judgment. But her efforts did little to ease the tension. The deeper Harry pushed, the more Meghan deflected, until, finally, Harry allegedly asked her point blank, "Did you sleep with him?" No one knows exactly what Meghan said in response. Some say she remained silent. Others claim she gave a vague, emotionless answer that neither confirmed nor denied. But whatever was said, it confirmed Harry's worst fear. And in that moment, something shifted inside him. Witnesses claimed he stormed out of the hotel suite, leaving Meghan alone in a whirlwind of emotional rubble. What followed that confrontation was a storm of actions, each more drastic than the last. Harry began pulling out of planned appearances. His social media activity all but vanished. Meghan was photographed without her wedding ring days later, fueling speculation. But most telling of all was David Foster's behavior. The music mogul, normally comfortable in the spotlight, suddenly withdrew from interviews and red carpet events. His publicist refused to comment on private matters, and his wife, Catherine McPhee, was reportedly devastated by the rumors. Adding fuel to the fire were reports that Harry had quietly begun consulting legal experts. Not just divorce attorneys, but also asset protection firms and cyber forensics specialists. He wanted to know how deeply his finances had been compromised, how much of his private data, passwords, and inheritance information had been accessed, manipulated, or potentially leaked. His suspicions extended beyond infidelity. It was about betrayal on multiple fronts: emotional, legal, and financial. The $150 million figure wasn't just a number floating in gossip circles. It represented the combined value of Harry's remaining royal inheritance, his media contracts, and joint ventures with Meghan. Insiders claimed that Harry feared Meghan had been funneling portions of their shared wealth into private accounts, some allegedly tied to LLCs in her name or associated with entities that Foster had helped create. While none of these allegations have been confirmed in a court of law, the mere suggestion was enough to send Harry into a protective frenzy. At the same time, rumors swirled about Meghan's next moves. Some claimed she had already prepared a counter-narrative, framing Harry as emotionally unstable and accusing him of violating her privacy by accessing her personal devices. Others said she was preparing to go public with her own version of events, perhaps in an upcoming tell-all interview or docuseries. The battle lines were being drawn, not just in courtrooms or financial spreadsheets, but in the court of public opinion. Media outlets began picking up on the tension. A few brave columnists hinted at irreconcilable fractures within the Sussex household. Tabloids splashed vague headlines about Meghan being seen alone at public events while Harry remained reclusive. Online forums erupted with speculation, some fans defending Meghan, others demanding justice for Harry. The divide became so pronounced that even celebrities close to the couple were reportedly choosing sides. But perhaps the most disturbing development came from the royal family itself. Buckingham Palace, which had remained silent during much of Harry and Meghan's post-royal controversies, was said to be monitoring the situation closely. There were quiet meetings, emergency phone calls, and speculation that King Charles himself had reached out to Harry, not to scold him, but to offer support. One royal insider claimed Charles was deeply disturbed by the betrayal and wanted to ensure his son was protected, financially and emotionally. It's worth noting that this alleged scandal didn't erupt in a vacuum. For years, critics had accused Meghan of being overly ambitious, too controlling, and too willing to use royal connections for personal gain. Supporters argued she was a trailblazer, navigating an institution built to destroy outsiders. But this alleged affair with David Foster changed the narrative. It reframed the story from a tale of independence and empowerment into something far more cynical, a calculated campaign of manipulation carried out under the guise of love and loyalty. As for David Foster, his silence has only deepened the mystery. He has not issued any public denial, nor has he acknowledged the swirling rumors. Sources close to him insist he is devastated by the accusations and that any relationship with Meghan was purely professional. But silence in scandals of this magnitude often speaks louder than words. And for Prince Harry, that silence has likely confirmed more than he ever wanted to believe. The emotional toll on Harry has reportedly been immense. Those closest to him describe a man in crisis, devastated, paranoid, but also fueled by a new sense of purpose. For the first time since leaving the royal family, he is said to be re-evaluating every choice he made. Marrying Meghan, leaving England, cutting off his family. Everything is on the table now. The illusions have shattered. The fight has begun. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle stepped back from royal duties in early 2020, the world was told it was a move toward peace, independence, and privacy. The couple released joint statements about seeking financial autonomy, living a more private life, and raising their children away from the harsh glare of the British tabloids. But over time, cracks in the public narrative began to appear. Multiple commercial deals, a growing media empire, strategic friendships, and a complex web of financial arrangements suggested that the couple's version of freedom was not as straightforward as it first seemed. At the heart of this intricate drama lies one figure whose ambition has often been the subject of admiration, skepticism, and controversy: Meghan Markle. And now, in the wake of the alleged betrayal with David Foster, many are asking, was the pursuit of independence ever really about love and liberty? Or was it a meticulously planned strategy to gain access, control, and eventually sole dominion over an empire estimated to be worth over $150 million? Let's begin by unpacking that figure. The $150 million often cited in reports is not a lump sum handed over in one royal check. It is the cumulative estimated value of assets, deals, and expected earnings tied to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's post-royal life. This includes a reported $100 million Netflix deal, a $25 million Spotify contract, now allegedly defunct, advance payments and future earnings from Prince Harry's memoir Spare, along with speaking fees, investments, and endorsements tied to their brand. But what few people understood when these deals were first announced was how they were structured, and more importantly, who controlled them. According to leaked legal memos and independent financial assessments, many of these deals were negotiated through entities that Meghan either founded, chaired, or had direct influence over. From Archwell Incorporated to other consulting ventures, Meghan reportedly surrounded herself with trusted lawyers and advisors who were separate from Prince Harry's long-standing financial team. Sources say this gave her quiet dominance over the business side of their shared brand, while Harry remained focused on causes close to his heart, like veterans' mental health and climate change. Initially, Harry may not have seen a problem. He trusted Meghan implicitly. She was the former actress who had already built a public image and knew how to navigate brand negotiations, social media, and public perception. She had experience he lacked. But as time passed, Harry's inner circle began to raise concerns. Some pointed out that his name and royal lineage were being used extensively in marketing materials, while he was often left out of decision-making processes. One insider claimed he'd show up to a meeting and discover decisions had already been made. Another said Meghan treated him like the face of the product, not the partner in the business. David Foster's role in all this cannot be ignored. With deep roots in Hollywood and vast experience managing brands and careers, Foster became a key advisor to Meghan during the most crucial years of the Sussexes' commercial rise. It was Foster who helped facilitate meetings with top-tier producers, guided them through the American PR playbook, and connected them to entertainment industry insiders. Meghan allegedly relied heavily on him, not just for strategic counsel, but also for discreet support when navigating complex financial decisions. It is here that the conspiracy allegations begin to take form. Several high-level sources, including two former business consultants, have suggested that Meghan and Foster had long-term conversations about how to protect Meghan's financial future should her marriage to Harry collapse. These conversations allegedly included discussions about asset division, brand ownership, and intellectual property rights. Some say Meghan moved proactively to ensure that any business built in the U.S. remained under her control, regardless of the marriage's future. At first glance, this might seem like standard prenuptial planning. After all, in high-profile marriages, especially involving individuals with fame and money, protecting assets is common. But what makes this different and more disturbing is the timing and intent behind these moves. One business associate claimed she wasn't protecting what she brought in. She was securing control over everything they created together. Another said it was as if she always knew this marriage had a shelf life. Then came a shocking revelation from a whistleblower inside one of their shared consulting firms. This individual claimed that Meghan had requested financial projections assuming a future separation scenario, asking analysts to calculate her potential earnings if Harry were no longer involved. The firm reportedly refused, citing ethical concerns, but the request itself was alarming. Why would a woman newly married, building a global brand with her husband, already be preparing for financial independence? Why model a future that didn't include him? Unless it was already part of the plan? This becomes even more suspicious when you consider the network of companies and trusts tied to the Sussex brand. Public records show a complex web of LLCs and nonprofit entities, some in Delaware, some in California, and others in tax-advantaged jurisdictions. Experts say this setup is not uncommon among high-wealth individuals, but in this case, the control structures leaned heavily in Meghan's favor. For example, the Archwell Foundation, though promoted as a joint venture, lists Meghan as having key executive privileges that Harry reportedly does not possess, and several licensing agreements, including those for upcoming book deals and documentaries, list Meghan as the primary rights holder. All this begs the question, was Prince Harry intentionally cut out of his own empire? The theory gaining traction among some insiders is that Meghan, with David Foster's help, engineered a long-term financial strategy that would make her not just independent, but untouchable. Foster, known for his financial savvy and ruthless protection of celebrity assets, is alleged to have helped create firewalls that limited Harry's ability to access or control certain funds. If true, this would mean that even in the event of divorce, Harry might have difficulty claiming ownership over ventures that used his name, image, and story, but were legally structured in Meghan's favor. There's also the question of legacy wealth. Prince Harry inherited millions from his mother, Princess Diana, and receives an annual income from trusts set up by Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles. While these funds are technically protected by British law, Harry's access and control have allegedly been influenced by his relationship with Meghan. One royal insider claims that Meghan encouraged Harry to move large portions of his inheritance into joint accounts and to liquidate certain investments to fund their American lifestyle. If that's true, and if Meghan was quietly creating a financial fortress around herself, then this could be one of the most sophisticated financial takedowns in royal history. Further complicating matters is the suggestion that Meghan sought legal counsel not just in California, but also in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, known hubs for financial privacy. Documents reportedly uncovered by investigative reporters show consultations with international firms specializing in asset shielding and wealth migration. Meghan's legal team has refused to comment on these allegations, citing confidentiality, but the optics are difficult to ignore. In light of all this, Prince Harry's emotional collapse following the alleged affair with David Foster makes more sense. It wasn't just a betrayal of the heart. It was a realization that the entire life he built post-Megxit might not have been his at all. That every smile on the red carpet, every joint venture, every philanthropic announcement had been carefully orchestrated by a woman who may have always had one eye on the exit door, and a mentor who helped write the playbook. Critics argue that even if these allegations are true, Meghan was simply being smart. After all, she gave up her acting career, endured international scrutiny, and rebranded herself under intense pressure. Why wouldn't she protect herself financially? But others see something more sinister, a deliberate and coldly calculated effort to siphon control from a man who, by all accounts, was emotionally dependent on her. There's also an ethical question at the heart of this. Did Meghan exploit Harry's trauma, his desire for love, his need for emotional security, and his eagerness to escape the royal system to gain access to fame, money, and control? And if so, how much of this was done alone, and how much with David Foster's strategic guidance? We may never know the full extent of the truth, but one thing is clear. The $150 million empire the Sussexes built together may now be at the center of a brutal legal and emotional war. And Meghan, thanks to early legal maneuvering, strategic alliances, and perhaps even emotional manipulation, may already be holding all the keys. There is a certain kind of emotional unraveling that doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, like water rising inside a sinking ship, first around the ankles, then the waist, until suddenly, you're gasping for air, wondering how you didn't see it coming. For Prince Harry, the moment of collapse didn't begin with a single betrayal. It was the culmination of years of internal battles, missteps, excommunication from his birthright, and misplaced trust in the people he believed loved him most. Following the alleged affair between Meghan Markle and David Foster and the devastating realization that the $150 million empire he helped build may not truly belong to him, Prince Harry reportedly spiraled into a deep psychological and emotional decline. Those closest to him described this period as the most vulnerable and mentally fragile state he has experienced since the death of his mother, Princess Diana. The warning signs were there, just more subtle this time. In earlier years, Harry had shown signs of unresolved trauma through rebellion, substance experimentation, and a deep resentment toward the press. But this time, his breakdown was less external and more corrosive from the inside. He withdrew from public appearances, declined invitations to major events, and reportedly stopped attending scheduled meetings and calls for the Archwell Foundation. One insider claimed Harry was barely speaking to anyone for days at a time, and when he did speak, he often sounded detached and numb. Friends who tried to reach out were reportedly met with silence. According to a Montecito neighbor, Harry was seen walking alone late at night through private trails near his estate, dressed in simple black hoodies, head down, and earbuds in, completely unrecognizable from the charismatic Duke the public once adored. It was like seeing a ghost of himself, the neighbors said. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just walked past like he didn't even know where he was. The emotional weight of betrayal cannot be understated. Prince Harry had severed ties with much of his royal family, distanced himself from the institutional framework that once protected him, and placed his entire trust in two people, his wife and his surrogate father figure. For both of them to allegedly betray him in such a calculated and personal way broke something in him that hadn't been touched even by the most vicious tabloid campaigns or the cruelest family fallout. Sources close to Harry say he began questioning not only the motives of Meghan and David Foster but also his own judgment. He reportedly told one close confidant, "I've been lied to for years, but this time I chose it. I walked straight into it." That kind of guilt, self-inflicted and unrelenting, can be harder to carry than any public scandal. Mental health experts, though not commenting directly on Harry's situation, note that when someone with pre-existing trauma is exposed to a fresh betrayal that mirrors past wounds, the breakdown is often exponential. It's not just about what's happening now, it's about everything that came before. In Harry's case, the death of Diana, the suppression of grief, the betrayal he perceived from his own family when Meghan was being targeted by the British press, all of it came crashing down with this latest scandal. One deeply concerning report emerged from a close family friend who claimed that during the darkest part of this breakdown, Harry allegedly secluded himself in one wing of the Montecito estate for several days, refusing food and sleep. He was said to be pacing through the house at night, sometimes talking aloud to himself. Security staff reportedly grew worried enough to call in a private mental health counselor, who stayed on site for 48 hours. It was during this period that Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, allegedly took over household management, controlling access to Harry, handling press inquiries, and deciding who was allowed in or out of the estate. While some argue this was a responsible move made out of concern for Harry's well-being, others see it as a red flag. Was Doria trying to help Harry, or control the narrative before it got out of hand? Interestingly, while Harry was isolating himself, Meghan maintained her public appearances. She was seen at fashion events, charity fundraisers, and photographed in upbeat poses, often without her wedding ring. This stark contrast in demeanor only heightened speculation. To observers, it looked as though Meghan had already emotionally moved on, while Harry was still falling apart behind closed doors. There was also a notable absence of external support. Prince William, King Charles and other royal family members did not make any public statements, nor were there signs of them reaching out to Harry during this time. One former palace aide suggested that, despite the severity of the situation, the royal family remained hands-off, out of fear of further public entanglement. They believe Harry made his choice when he left, the aide said. Now, he must live with the consequences. Yet there were small signs that someone within the royal fold still cared. A discreet royal security team, once assigned to Harry but removed after Megxit, was reportedly seen near his California estate during this time, raising questions about whether Charles had quietly dispatched someone to keep an eye on his son. Whether or not Harry accepted that protection remains unclear. Meanwhile, Harry's appearance began to change. His usually well-groomed look gave way to unkempt facial hair, tired eyes, and disheveled clothing. Public sightings were rare, but each one showed a man visibly aged by stress and heartbreak. Insiders claimed that he had stopped exercising, lost interest in his favorite pastimes like polo and documentary filmmaking, and spent hours watching reruns of his mother's interviews and old family footage, searching, perhaps, for answers or a sense of grounding. During this emotional collapse, Harry also began journaling obsessively. One staffer said that dozens of notebooks and scrap papers filled with handwritten thoughts, diagrams, and emotional reflections were scattered across his bedroom and study. These pages, they said, included everything from family trees to timelines of events, potential legal strategies, and even letters addressed to his late mother. It was like he was trying to make sense of the betrayal by mapping it out. Like solving a crime scene, the staffer shared. But amid the darkness, there were glimpses of a fight still left in him. Harry reportedly reached out to a select group of old friends from his pre-Meghan days. These were people he had distanced himself from after the wedding, at Meghan's suggestion, but now found himself needing again. One of them, a former army comrade, was seen entering the estate through a back entrance and staying overnight for several days. These visits, say insiders, were therapeutic. They reminded Harry of who he was before the noise, before the brand, before the deception. There were also reports that Harry began writing a second memoir, not a public release, but a private document meant to help him process what had happened. It wasn't a tell-all, but more of a confessional. In it, he allegedly details the slow emotional erosion of his marriage, the growing discomfort he felt around Foster, and the final, crushing moment when the truth could no longer be denied. One quote, allegedly pulled from that draft, reads, "They didn't just break my heart. They hollowed out my faith in people. I'm not sure if I'll ever believe anyone again." Eventually, with the help of private counselors and a restructured inner circle, Harry began to stabilize. He started exercising again, spent more time with his children, and began working on projects related to mental health advocacy. Those who saw him during this period described a man still haunted, still hurting, but no longer paralyzed. He also reportedly began taking legal steps to protect what remained of his financial and emotional future. He reviewed all joint ventures, questioned every shared bank account, and began disentangling his identity from Meghan's public brand. The process was painful, slow, and meticulous, but necessary. This chapter of Harry's life will likely be remembered as the moment when he reached rock bottom, but also the moment when he began to rebuild. Not as a prince, not as a husband, not even as a public figure, but as a man forced to stand alone and rediscover who he truly is. Without the voices of manipulation, without the shadows of betrayal, and without the comfort of illusions. While the world's eyes have focused primarily on the high-profile figures at the center of this explosive scandal, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, and David Foster, there remains another presence whose role has been deeply underestimated, Doria Ragland. Often portrayed as the calm, grounded figure in Meghan's life, Doria has largely remained in the background, silent during public fallouts and absent from most media narratives. But behind that quiet demeanor, insiders suggest, lies a woman who may have held more influence than anyone realized, especially when things started to fall apart. As the only parent in Meghan's life to attend her wedding, Doria made an immediate impression on the British public. Elegant, poised, and serene in her demeanor, she won hearts with her quiet support of Meghan and was seen by many as a stark contrast to Meghan's estranged father, Thomas Markle. For years, Doria was regarded as the dignified matriarch who kept her distance from drama and preferred to stay away from the cameras. But within Meghan and Harry's household, sources now claim, Doria had a much deeper role, one that took on increasing power as Harry's emotional state began to crumble. Following the alleged confrontation between Harry and Meghan over her affair with David Foster, Harry reportedly retreated from the public eye, overwhelmed by heartbreak, paranoia, and confusion. During this time, when Harry reportedly became unresponsive to staff, avoided public commitments, and isolated himself in one wing of the Montecito estate, Doria stepped in. Her presence, according to staff members and insiders, suddenly became constant, direct, and commanding. She wasn't just visiting anymore, one insider said. She was giving instructions. People who used to report to Harry started reporting to her. It was like she'd assumed control. This included not only managing the estate's operations, but also overseeing interactions with Harry's legal team, publicists, and external advisors. Some viewed it as a necessary intervention, a mother protecting her daughter and stepping in to prevent further damage. Others, however, saw it as a calculated move to assert dominance during a moment of chaos. Several individuals who worked in proximity to the Sussexes during this time reported that Doria began to filter who could communicate with Harry. Phone calls were screened. Meeting requests were deferred. Even longtime friends and business contacts of Harry's claimed they were met with silence or vague explanations when trying to check on him. One longtime associate, speaking under the condition of anonymity, revealed, it was almost as if Harry had become a protected asset, walled off from everyone, while Doria made the decisions on his behalf. These actions might be understandable during a medical emergency, but Harry was not hospitalized. He was not declared incompetent. He was grieving, wounded, and vulnerable, but still fully conscious. So why was Doria acting as the gatekeeper to his life? The answer may lie in a broader strategy, one that mirrors Meghan's methodical approach to branding, business, and media control. Those close to the situation say Doria had long played a more active role in Meghan's life than the public knew. She was not merely a loving mother visiting occasionally. She was a consistent, behind-the-scenes figure involved in family discussions, press strategy, and the careful construction of Meghan's public image. Her influence reportedly extended to the early years of Meghan and Harry's marriage, including their relocation from the UK and the development of the Archewell Foundation. It's important to note that Doria is not a stranger to professional environments. She holds a master's degree in social work and has worked in mental health counseling and yoga instruction. Her calm demeanor is often credited with helping Meghan maintain balance during the royal family's media storms. But what many don't realize is that Doria has also surrounded herself with powerful allies in legal, entertainment, and wellness circles. She is well-connected, media-savvy, and fiercely protective of her daughter. During the height of Harry's emotional breakdown, insiders claim that Doria's role morphed into that of a crisis manager. One staff member said, Doria wasn't just handling family business, she was protecting the entire brand. She knew that if Harry started speaking publicly, or if certain things were leaked, the entire narrative could fall apart. In other words, Doria's control wasn't just about shielding Harry, it was about shielding Meghan and the empire they had built together. This leads to a larger question. Did Doria know about the alleged affair between Meghan and David Foster before Harry confronted Meghan about it? Sources are divided. Some claim Doria was completely blindsided by the confrontation, shocked and deeply upset when Harry accused Meghan of betrayal. Others insist she had long harbored suspicions about the nature of Meghan and Foster's relationship, but chose to ignore them for the sake of the bigger picture. A former consultant who worked with Archewell suggests Doria may have even advised Meghan to keep Foster close, both for his industry expertise and for his potential utility in guiding Harry through Hollywood's elite circles. Doria always played the long game, the consultant said. She wasn't flashy, but she was calculating. She believed in Meghan's potential to be bigger than the monarchy itself, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even Harry, derail that vision. If that's true, then Doria's silence and strategic presence in the days following the confrontation can be seen in a new light, not as passive concern, but as tactical containment. By controlling access to Harry, Doria could manage the fallout, prevent leaks, and quietly assess damage. She could also buy time for Meghan to regroup, formulate a response, and consult legal counsel without the chaos of a spiraling husband interfering with media spin. In the weeks that followed, Meghan's public composure remained intact. She smiled for cameras, attended events, and projected stability. Doria, often at her side, gave no hint of the storm brewing behind the scenes. Meanwhile, Harry remained largely out of sight. The public had no idea what was truly happening behind the gates of their multi-million-dollar estate. And that, insiders say, was exactly how Doria wanted it. There is another layer to consider. Doria's increasing influence over household decisions began to concern some of the senior staff members, especially those who had previously reported to Harry. A few staffers, reportedly frustrated by the shift in command, submitted resignation notices. One individual described the atmosphere as tense and paranoid, with Doria running operations like a corporate executive rather than a concerned parent. It was hard to know who was in charge anymore. But it wasn't Harry. Furthermore, there are rumors that Doria was the one who advised Meghan not to respond publicly to the affair allegations, not to deny them, not to confirm them, but to remain completely neutral. This strategy, known in celebrity PR circles as controlled silence, is meant to minimize exposure and limit potential liability. The idea is that by not giving oxygen to rumors, they eventually die out. In some cases, it works. But in others, particularly when the silence is read as guilt, it only intensifies speculation. Some observers argue that Doria may have genuinely believed she was helping, that her role was not manipulative but protective. After all, Harry was emotionally wrecked. Meghan was facing public scrutiny, and the family brand was in danger of collapse. A strong, calm hand was needed to steady the ship. But others remained unconvinced, especially those who saw how quickly Doria assumed control, how skillfully she managed communications, and how little access even close allies were given during the crisis. One former royal insider summarized the situation this way: Doria has always been underestimated because she's quiet. But don't mistake quiet for passive. She knows exactly what she's doing. And in this case, she may have done more than anyone to preserve Meghan's standing, even as the scandal threatened to burn everything down. As the dust settles, Doria remains where she has always been, close to Meghan, quietly observing, never giving interviews, never making public missteps. Whether she was a silent power broker pulling strings from the shadows or simply a mother trying to hold her family together will remain a point of contention. But one thing is certain: her role during Harry's emotional unraveling was neither small nor insignificant. The public doesn't need a press release to know when something's wrong. Silence, sudden disappearances, and changes in routine can speak louder than any official statement. When Prince Harry began pulling away from public life, missing scheduled events, remaining absent from social media updates, and retreating entirely from the spotlight, whispers began circulating. Then came the images: Meghan Markle at events alone, her expression unreadable, her wedding ring noticeably absent. Doria Ragland, calm and poised at her side. David Foster, unseen. And Harry? Gone from view. Something had clearly shifted. But in the absence of concrete facts, the public, tabloids, and internet investigators began filling in the blanks with theories, leaks, and speculation. The British tabloids, never known for subtlety, were the first to raise red flags. Headlines began appearing in outlets like The Sun, Daily Mail, and The Mirror, hinting at unrest in Montecito, strained ties in the Sussex household, and mysterious absences from Harry. Initially, these pieces were vague, careful not to make direct accusations. But by the second week after Harry's public withdrawal, the tone changed. Tabloid headlines became bolder. Where is Prince Harry? Has Meghan moved on? And storm brewing behind closed gates. The media had long been accused of being aggressive, even cruel, in their coverage of Meghan Markle. But this time, their tone was noticeably different. The narrative was beginning to shift. While previous years had framed Meghan as a victim of royal rigidity and media racism, the new rumors positioned her as the possible orchestrator of something more manipulative. The tabloids began digging for clues, connecting dots that had previously been ignored or dismissed. First came the photographic evidence. Meghan attending events alone. Meghan dining with business executives in Los Angeles while Harry was reportedly at home. Meghan wearing high-end fashion and smiling for cameras, while Harry hadn't been seen in weeks. Then came subtle body language analysis videos on YouTube and TikTok, dissecting Meghan's posture, tone, and facial expressions. Was she mourning the loss of a relationship, or merely putting on a show of strength? Was her silence a sign of pain or strategy? The American press picked up next. Outlets like People, Page 6, and TMZ began publishing their own reports, mostly citing sources close to the couple. A flurry of articles emerged, speculating about Harry's mental health and Meghan's growing independence. One article from Page 6 quoted an anonymous friend of the couple saying, they've been living separate lives for months. This isn't sudden. It's been building for a long time. Soon, podcasts and talk shows began discussing the story. Radio personalities and YouTube commentators debated everything from Meghan's motivations to Harry's possible revenge moves. One popular theory, echoed across Reddit threads and online forums, was that Meghan had used David Foster not just for companionship, but as a business strategist and insurance policy. The idea was simple and disturbing. If the marriage ever failed, Foster could help Meghan control the brand they'd built together and keep the financial reins firmly in her hands. Then came the first real leak, a heavily redacted legal memo allegedly sent by a lawyer associated with one of Meghan's brand ventures. The memo included phrases like divestment timeline, reputation contingency, and narrative control strategy. Though its authenticity was never confirmed, it exploded across social media. Commentators began speculating that Meghan had planned her next public moves well in advance, and that her team had been preparing for Harry's possible emotional breakdown. This leak was followed by a more personal bombshell, a private message exchange allegedly between a former Archewell staffer and a media consultant. In it, the staffer suggested that Harry is a liability now and that we need to minimize exposure. The message, though never verified, gained immense traction, adding to the perception that Harry was being sidelined by the very team he helped build. Even more damaging were the quiet murmurs from former palace aides and royal insiders. For years, these individuals had remained tight-lipped or spoken vaguely about Meghan and Harry's departure from royal duties. But now, some of them began offering more pointed observations. One former aide told a journalist anonymously, "This was always the fear, that he'd give everything up and end up alone, broken, and financially exploited." It didn't take long for the public to start choosing sides. Team Harry supporters flooded social media with messages of concern and empathy. They accused Meghan of betrayal, gaslighting, and strategic manipulation. Some claimed that Meghan had always seen Harry as a stepping stone, a way to catapult herself into elite circles, secure massive deals, and ultimately brand herself independently of the monarchy. On the other side, Team Meghan supporters dismissed the affair allegations as sexist, classist, and rooted in long-standing media bias. They argued that Meghan was a self-made woman unfairly demonized for protecting her career and her family. They saw Harry's withdrawal as a temporary emotional reaction to stress, not evidence of betrayal. But amid all the theories, a few consistent details emerged, details that kept fueling the fire. Meghan had not made a single public statement addressing the allegations. David Foster, who was once so present in their lives, was now missing from view. And Harry remained silent. The vacuum of information was filled with noise, and that noise became the story. International media outlets began covering the drama as well. In Australia, Canada, and South Africa, countries with close ties to the British monarchy, television pundits speculated openly about the state of the Sussex marriage. Even European tabloids began printing sensational headlines. The story had officially gone global. At the same time, several close friends of Meghan and Harry, celebrities, activists, and business partners, found themselves in uncomfortable positions. Some began distancing themselves from the couple. One high-profile Hollywood producer, who had previously collaborated with Archewell, was quoted off the record saying, "It's not good for business to be tied to instability, especially when there's money involved." Others, more loyal to Harry, reportedly reached out privately to express support but refused to comment publicly out of fear of becoming targets themselves. The turning point in the media frenzy came when a well-known royal biographer went on national television and claimed, "Prince Harry is experiencing the exact same isolation and betrayal that haunted his mother before her death. The only difference is, this time, the betrayal may have come from inside his home." That statement went viral, quoted across platforms, dissected in talk shows, and reposted on social media over 100,000 times in less than 48 hours. Suddenly, the narrative wasn't just about gossip. It was about legacy. About what happens when a royal breaks the rules, trusts the wrong people, and is left to face the consequences alone. And through it all, Meghan remained poised. She attended charity events. She posed for magazine covers. She launched a new wellness brand and signed a new book deal. Some saw it as strength. Others saw it as coldness. Either way, her silence spoke volumes, and her control over her public image remained masterful. For Harry, however, the fallout was deeply personal. As the media speculated, dissected, and projected, he reportedly became more reclusive. Every article, every headline, was a reminder of what he had lost, not just a marriage, not just money, but control over his own story. Eventually, Meghan's team issued a brief statement to a major publication. The Duchess of Sussex has no comment at this time. She remains focused on her work, her family, and her ongoing commitment to making a positive impact. It was polished, it was cold, and it revealed nothing. The public frenzy did eventually begin to calm, but only after weeks of relentless coverage. By then, the damage was done. Trust had eroded, opinions had hardened, and the myth of the perfect post-royal life had shattered. Inside Buckingham Palace, scandal is nothing new. From affairs